We too often forget that not only is there a soul of goodness in things evil, but very generally also a soul of truth in things erroneous. While many admit the abstract probability that a falsity has usually a nucleus of verity, few bear this abstract probability in mind when passing judgment on the opinions of others. A belief that is proved to be grossly at variance with fact is cast aside with indignation or contempt. And in the heat of antagonism, scarcely anyone inquires what there was in this belief which commended it to men's minds. Yet, there must have been something. And there is reason to suspect that this something was its correspondence with certain of their experiences. An extremely limited or vague correspondence, perhaps, but still a correspondence. Even the absurdest report may in nearly every instance be traced to an actual occurrence. And had there been no such actual occurrence, this preposterous misrepresentation of it would never have existed. Though the distorted or magnified image transmitted to us through the refracting medium of rumour is utterly unlike the reality, yet in the absence of the reality, there would have been no distorted or magnified image. And thus it is with human beliefs in general. Entirely wrong as they may appear, the implication is that they originally contained, and perhaps still contain, some small amount of truth. Definite views on this matter would be very useful to us. It is important that we should form something like a general theory of current opinions, so that we may neither overestimate nor underestimate their worth. Arriving at correct judgments on disputed questions much depends on the mental attitude preserved while listening to or taking part in the controversies. And for the preservation of a right attitude, it is needful that we should learn how true and yet how untrue are average human beliefs. On the one hand, we must keep free from that bias in favour of received ideas which expresses itself in such dogmas as what everyone says must be true, or the voice of the people is the voice of God. On the other hand, the fact disclosed by a survey of the past that majorities have usually been wrong must not blind us to the complementary fact that majorities have usually not been entirely wrong. And the avoidance of these extremes being a prerequisite to Catholic thinking, we shall do well to provide ourselves with a safeguard against them by making a valuation of opinions in the abstract. To this end, we must contemplate the kind of relation that ordinarily subsists between opinions and facts. Let us do so with one of those beliefs which under various forms has prevailed among all nations in all times. Section 2. Early traditions represent rulers as gods or demigods. By their subjects, primitive kings were regarded as superhuman in origin and superhuman in power. They possessed divine titles, received obeisances like those made before the altars of deities, and were in some cases actually worshipped. Of course, along with the implied beliefs, there existed a belief in the unlimited power of the ruler over his subjects, extending even to the taking of their lives at will, as until recently in Fiji, where a victim stood unbound to be killed at the word of his chief, himself declaring, "Whatever the king says must be done." In other times, and among other races, we find these beliefs a little modified. The monarch, instead of being thought god or demigod, is conceived to be a man having divine authority, with perhaps more or less of divine nature. He retains, however, titles expressing his heavenly descent or relationships, and is still saluted in forms and words as humble as those addressed to the deity. While in some places the lives and properties of his people, if not so completely at his mercy, are still in theory supposed to be his.